Hey, what is up guys? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here, and in today's Market Watch episode, we are going to be covering another set of cards that have, for one reason or another, spiked up in price recently. I know that there's a lot happening on the market, and it can be difficult to catch up with everything, so we're going to try to cover as much as possible while we can here. Now, one thing I do want to touch on before we get into today's Market Watch episode is the potential effects of the coronavirus on the market. I don't want to get too political or give too much of my opinion on the severity of what's happening or anything like that. So instead, what we're going to do is just stick with the facts, and then also I'll give you guys my opinion on how the market will be affected as a result. So just yesterday, we found out that YCS Charlotte, which was supposed to happen over March 28th and March 29th, has been canceled officially by Konami due to the coronavirus scares. Obviously, with how things are going on around the world, a lot of people are concerned, right? Like even NBA games are now suspended, which personally makes me really sad. So it's looking like any of these sort of large events could be under fire here. Now that being said, I think that this could have implications on the Yu-Gi-Oh market and the Yu-Gi-Oh community. Now, it is entirely possible that we could see multiple large events canceled over the next several months. It's actually quite likely that we are going to see some regionals at the very least canceled over the next 2 months, but this could even extend to other YCS events or even nationals if it gets really bad. However, even if these events aren't canceled, right, I would expect the attendance at events for the rest of 2020 to be considerably lower than what people are expecting, whether that's due to official travel bans or simply people wanting to stay home and not be at these large social events, right? Not wanting to take the risk of potential exposure. And as a result, I think it is very possible that we could see overall the prices of cards just start to decline over the course of however long the coronavirus scare is alive for. For example, cards like Appaloosa, right? That's set to be reprinted in the Megatons this year. But if people don't need the cards for events that are going to take place between then and now, it's very possible we could just see a huge sell-off of cards. A lot of people pick up cards for certain events, maybe even just for a regionals or something in a smaller area. But without these events happening, card prices could very well start to fall off. There'll be a lot more people selling, so we're going to see an increase in the supply available on the market because they don't have those events to attend, they don't need their cards, and then we'll have fewer people looking to buy, a decrease in demand because they don't need to go play events, which is naturally just going to drive the prices down quite a bit over time. Now, all of this isn't to say that you shouldn't be buying cards or playing Yu-Gi-Oh within this time period, but rather, this is just something for all of you to keep in mind, because I know that a lot of you who watch Market Watches may do a fair amount of buying or selling or trading cards, even if you're not a vendor, right? Even if it's just more on a casual level, kind of like what I do. Yu-Gi-Oh cards aren't like stocks, right? With a lot of stocks, even when they're going down, right, they bounce back up if you hold them through the scare because the economy kind of recovers. But that's not the same with Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Yu-Gi-Oh isn't like stocks. With Yu-Gi-Oh, you hold onto a card and it's going to have a certain amount of value for a certain amount of time, but then it sees a reprint and the card declines in value quite a lot, and it doesn't necessarily bounce back up. So as a result, if you guys are holding on to too many cards, you could lose a lot of that value, and it could just work out to be a really bad investment for you. So this is just a message for all of you guys who are buying and selling and trading to maybe just be a little bit more careful with what you guys do decide to pick up over the course of the next several months. Alright, so let's get back to our regularly scheduled Market Watch, shall we? So a couple days ago, we had a new archetype announced called the Marfei, an archetype that revolves around level 2 beast type monsters and making Ixies with them. They got a dozen cards or something, but one of the best cards for the deck actually came out several years ago, and that is Obedient Schooled. Obedient Schooled allows you to summon 3 level 2 or lower beast monsters from your deck in defense mode while you control no monsters, but it negates their effects and it locks you into beasts for the rest of the turn. Now this is fine for the archetype because the archetype does contain a couple of rank 2 beast Ixies monsters, so this card literally just brings 3 bodies out for them onto the board for free. However, unfortunately, even though the cards in the archetype are absolutely adorable, the deck looks quite bad. It's basically just one of those filler kind of archetypes, kind of like crawlers, where sure, they get a fair number of support cards, but they're never actually going to do anything in the meta. Sorry to all you crawler players out there, But yeah, because of this archetype, we've seen a bit of a buyout of Obedience Schooled. It is an older card. It's a super rare from Legacy of the Valiant, and then it was a Megaton super from that year as well. Now, we did see it jump up in price to like $10 to $15 or so at first, but it has since cooled off down to around the $7 mark. I think a lot of people read the cards. They realized that the archetype, even though this card works really well for that archetype, it doesn't make the archetype any better. So as much as the archetype is adorable, this card is a definite sell for me, since I don't think that the Marfei are going to be meta relevant at all. Next up, let's take a look at Metal Reflect Slime, specifically the Ultimate Rare version. So with the next Duelist pack, which is going to be featuring some merit cards, we're getting a monster called Egyptian God Slime, a fusion monster that looks like Obelisk the Tormentor. However, to summon this card, you need to just tribute a level 10 Aqua monster with 0 attack points. And believe it or not, Metal Reflect Slime happens to be a card that fits that exact requirement. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, Metal Reflect Slime was first printed in Phantom Darkness and was available as an ultimate rare. So naturally, people decided that the card needed to be bought out. So with that, there are barely any near mint ultimate rare copies available on TCG Player at the moment, with the cheapest being around $60 a piece. Now, as much as playing Obelisk in a competitive deck would be cool, I personally don't think that this is going to be something that sees much meta play, so I don't really know why anyone would want to spend this much money on a card like this. It feels very similar to people who kind of bought out like the ultimate rare Earthbound Immortals when Duelist Pack Immortal Destiny came out. It's kind of like you're just buying out these old ultimate rare cards because they're semi-relevant to a new card, and they're an old ultimate rare, so there are very few quantities on the market. The ones that are available, you buy out all of the cheap ones, which is naturally going to very easily cause the price to spike up temporarily. However, the problem with that is that if people do have those quantities, they just list them for a lot lower, and it's very, very rare that you actually manage to sell those hyped up cards for that hyped up price. However, if you do happen to have this card and you can get any sort of like crazy value from it like this, then I would highly recommend that you sell it and do just that. Speaking of buying out random ultimate rares, next let's talk briefly about Spiral Spear Strike. So I believe that this buyout happened sometime last week, but it didn't really fit in with any of last week's stuff, so we'll talk about it briefly here. But yeah, so apparently the Gaia the Fierce Knight archetype got a bunch of new support. Like apparently Catapult Turtle got a retrain and fits in there as well. But those new cards are going to be coming in the set after Eternity Code called Rise of the Duelist. And of course, some big brain people decided to buy out Spiral Spear Strike in Ultimate Rare. Now technically, I guess this card could be good. It gives Gaia the Fierce Knight, Swift Gaia the Fierce Knight, or Gaia the Dragon Champion the ability to pierce. And if that monster deals damage, you get to draw 2 cards and then discard 1. But I mean, like, let's be real, the odds of this card, or even the Gaia the Fierce Knight archetype, doing anything at all is really, really slim. Maybe at like the casual level between friends if your opponent bricks. But yeah, so ultimate rares are quite expensive now. Unlimiteds have been relisted, so they're only around like $25 a piece. But no first eds have gone back up on the market, so the cheapest one you're finding there is like $90 on TCG Player. Obviously, this is pretty similar to Metal Reflect Slime in that you should just sell it if you have it and if you can actually find someone who's willing to pay this crazy price. Next up, the Trickstar engine has seen slightly more play in the TCG. It's a pretty decent light engine that can be used in Shaddolls, since Light Stage can help to get rid of back row, and you can either fuse with the Trickstars or use Corobane as an extra free body on the field. I believe that Corobane is also a pretty useful card in the OCG as well, as you can use Candina and Corobane to make Predaplant Vert Anaconda and make Dragoon of Red Eyes from there. It does remind me a lot of back when Nightmare Mermaid was legal in the TCG, where you just need any 2 monsters on the board to go into Cerberus or Phoenix and then into Mermaid. You make your Link monster and then you start your play off from there. So yes, because of this bit of increase in play, and then also the potential increase in play whenever we get Dragoon, Corobane has jumped up in price recently to around the $15 mark, whereas it was sitting at a low of under $5, I believe just a month or two ago. However, this card is due to be reprinted in the 2020 Megatins at the latest, as we already have confirmed earlier reprints of Phantasme and Pot of Extravagance, both of which were in Savage Strike, the same set. So yeah, this one is kind of up to you guys. If you want to look into playing the Trickstar engine in your deck, maybe it makes sense for you to hold on to the card. However, if it's just rotting in your binder and you don't plan to use it, I would be trying to actively move the card now while the price is hyped up. So with Crystron Needle Fiber being one of the most highly anticipated cards in Dual Overload, it does make sense that one of the best synchro tuners for Needle Fiber to tag into receives some attention as well. Formula Synchron is a great monster to summon during your opponent's turn, since you can draw a card, potentially getting you a hand trap, but also allowing you to synchro summon during your opponent's turn. This card was really abusable before, back in the synchro spam days with TG Hyper Librarian, though it hasn't seen much play recently. However, with Needle Fiber in the game, it certainly could. Because of this, the secret rare version of Formula Synchron from Legendary Collection 5Ds has been bought out, and it's currently sitting at $17 for a single copy on TCG Player. This is a huge price jump, especially considering how many other prints there are available, such as the ultra rare, gold rare, and then the regular original rare version. I'll be the first person to admit that I love secret rares, and that if I can play a secret rare in my deck, I will do it, sometimes even over like ultimate rares or turbo pack versions depending on the card. However, I think that this is a little bit too much of a price point for a card like Formula Synchron, just because there are so many other printings available. So if you can find someone who's like really dedicated to blinging out their needle fiber options, I would move the secret rare version and then look at something like the Duelist Saga Ultra Rare instead. Let's take a quick look at Ultimate Rare Cosmic Cyclone. So a couple of years ago, this card was only around $20 a piece. I actually remember when I got my set, I bid $52 on a playset of Ultimate Rare Cosmic Cyclones in an auction group on Facebook, and some people were like mocking me for it, and I was just like, whatever. But as an Ultimate Rare, and because the card is comparable to a lot of staple cards in the game, I felt like it was worth the investment because it was pretty low risk. It wasn't going to go any lower than that. And even though it took quite a while, it has paid off for me. Ultimate Rare Cosmic Cyclones have been gradually trending upwards over the past few months, although I think it's just recently that the prices spiked from around $25 to $30 a piece to over $50 that it is at now. It is, however, a really good card. It is a great alternative to Twin Twisters for decks that don't want to discard a card from their hand, and it does banish a card instead of just destroying it, potentially getting rid of a problem card for good that could activate in the graveyard. Now, the one downside, of course, you do have to pay 1,000 life points, so it's maybe not a great option in time, but I feel like this card does have a bit more room to increase in terms of price. In my mind, it is very similar to a card like Droll and Lockbird, where its price will fluctuate depending on the format, though after its initial price spike, it is going to stay relatively high from now on. Realistically, I don't see this card dropping below $40 for the foreseeable future, and maybe peaking at around the $65 to $70 mark. Now, this is obviously a much smaller card, but is one that I think does warrant some attention. Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds is a common from Cyber Dark Impact, but it is currently worth about $4 a piece. This is because it is a monster that can be summoned using the new Simorgh Link monster coming out in Dual Overload. Right now, a lot of people are talking about the Infinite Negate loop, but with a strong possibility that that might be addressed on the upcoming ban list, the Barrier Statue is another option that decks could take into consideration. This card does have a very simple effect, preventing special summoning unless it's a wind monster that's being summoned. I don't know how many people have actually taken the time to set this card aside. It's one of the reasons I'm really glad my collection is mostly alphabetized, but it is something to keep an eye on through the April 2020 ban list. As a side note, I would keep an eye on Godarla as well. It's the only wind kaiju, so it can be used to out the Barrier Statue potentially. But yeah, if you can pull this card out of your bulk or out of your quarter box at locals, this card is worth a few bucks now and could very well be worth a few more very soon. Alright guys, the last card I'm going to touch on here is the Anniversary Pack version of Red Eyes Black Dragon. So this card has really amazing artwork, and it's only available with the Anniversary Pack version in the TCG. With the possibility of Dragoon of Red Eyes coming to the TCG at any time, people have been looking for copies of Red Eyes and Dark Magician to play. We've actually seen buyouts of DDS Dark Magician already, where it was about $400 to $500 at one point, but Red Eyes didn't have a DDS print. It was just the Dark Magician, Blue Eyes, and Exodia. So aside from like an LOB first dead copy of Red Eyes, this is one of the nicest versions that you can play, and a lot of people have tried to pick up the card. However, because it was only available in the anniversary pack, which came out so long ago, there are actually quite few quantities of this card available on the market. I think that as a collector's card, this is a really cool piece, and I would be pretty reluctant to let go of it at all. Though I guess if someone is willing to gouge themselves for it, then sure. But I know that a lot of players maybe have a lot of cards, or they've been sitting on cards for a really long time. This card might be sitting in an old binder and you don't care much for this card, so you can go ahead and turn this card into a fair chunk of money or some other really solid cards. Alright everyone, that is it for today's episode. There is a fair amount of stuff going on with the Yu-Gi-Oh market, but a lot of it is really kind of weird and not too typical. So hopefully this episode helped to clear a few of those things up for you. Also, I do have a regionals that I am hoping to go to in April down in Seattle, so I'm really hoping that with the whole coronavirus thing, it doesn't get canceled or anything. But at this rate, I think there's a very good chance it might, or it might be a little bit hard to cross the border for me, which would really suck, but whatever, it is what it is. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy this video, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button for me. And if there's anything that maybe I missed or didn't cover, please be sure to let me know in the comment section down below so that I can potentially cover it in a future Market Watch episode to keep all of you as informed as possible. And if you guys want to see more from myself and from Tombox, do consider subscribing to MST.TV for all of the latest Yu-Gi-Oh content. And yeah, so until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.